On the 1st of June, Azerbaijani and Armenian leaders held informal talks in a quinquepartite format, which also involved EU Council President Charles Michel, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The atmosphere in the cafeteria wherein this sitting took place was quite cozy, bright, and I would even say slightly funky too. And it has been agreed that leaders will meet in Brussels on the 21st of July, this time within the trilateral Brussels format. And before that, there's going to be a convocation of foreign ministers in Washington, D.C. on the 12th of June. The real question now is what we should make of this Chisinau convocation and how consequential it is going to be. And this is the subject that I'm going to discuss with my guest today, Ahmad Alili, Director of Caucasus Policy Analysis Center.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much for being with us. It's awfully kind of you. So let's crack on. The first things first, what are your initial thoughts about this meeting, which took place on the 1st of June? What do you think it was supposed to achieve and what has it actually achieved?
Well, first of all, I'm against seeing it as an isolated meeting, frankly speaking. So it's a part of the process that was started by the Washington process in beginning of the May. The May of 2023 is the busiest month in terms of the Armenian-Azerbaijan peace-building efforts. I do not remember a time frame that for the last 30 years that was so busy with the Armenian Azerbaijani diplomats talking to each other, negotiating, and trying to come up with a solution. So first we had a meeting in Washington, then we had a meeting of leaders in Brussels on the 14th of May, then we had meeting of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Moscow, then we had the meeting of the leaders in Moscow, then this meeting in Chisinau. So I believe that this is part of the process, one of the biggest process, and I will say that the highest point of this process was the meeting in Brussels on the 14th of May. What was achieved on 14th of May cannot be replaced by anything, and I believe that that meeting has a great historical significance. Armenia and Azerbaijan recognizing each other's territorial integrity, and especially Armenian PM repeatedly on various international platforms and then back at home saying that Armenia recognize Azerbaijan territorial integrity and it includes Karabakh also. That's the most decisive point in this process. So I believe that what the Washington-Brussels project wanted to achieve, it already was achieved on the 13th of May.
Right.
So after agreeing that countries recognize each other's territorial integrity, especially Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, all other questions are the secondary importance. The main question, the principal question was about the recognizing Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan by Armenia, and that's done. So it means that in what was supposed to be in Chisinau, it's probably signing something. But frankly speaking, I believe that after the heated exchange of words that took place in Moscow, probably you needed this meeting just to calm down a bit and, as President Michel said, to start preparation for the next meeting. So probably that in Washington-Brussels agenda, there was no place for the meetings in Moscow. When they were announcing, this meetings that took place in Moscow, they were kind of like brought in from outside. So how the Washington and Brussels envisioned the process at the beginning of the May, probably there was not place for this heated, so that's why this is probably in Chisinau there would be some something signed, but
there was some expectation to that effect.
Yeah, so that was what after the Moscow meeting, it was clear that there will not be. You need some intra meeting so that to prepare that. But I believe that the European agenda is European deadline, internal deadline, is the autumn of 2023 in the next meeting.
Yeah, which will be in Spain.
Yes,
October
in Spain. That's the internal deadline, I would say. The American internal deadline was the end of May, but so that things happened. And I would say that in this context, what happened, it already, again, the highest point of that was Brussels meeting. And we can expect that the process is going to continue. But frankly speaking, I do not expect that Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan signing any document, because it's the tripartite statement signed by Armenian PM is the only document in the history of the last 30 years, the history of the Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process, that any leader signed a document saying that I'm giving up certain territories. So the reputational cost of that is quite big. So that's why Armenian PM is not going to, I don't believe that it's going to be easy for him to sign a document. But it might be Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Armenia and Azerbaijan signing some document. If Armenian MFA signs some document, so it's going to mean it's going to indicate the position of the government of Armenia. It's going to be some official document.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not going to be a document signed by Prime Minister Pashinyan himself. So its reputational cost of that, reputational damage of that, is going to be much lower than if the document was signed by Prime Minister Pashinyan. But I also believe that now Pashinyan wants to regain back its, all these points that it lost for the last 2 years, because now Armenian government is very proud that there is almost 13% of the economic growth in Armenia.
Right.
So that figure is used a lot. So in PR campaigns, in other places. So it means that within Armenia, you would see that there are certain process, like the Pashinyan team tries to rebuild that positive image back. So if that image is strong by the end of the year, by the autumn of 2023, we can expect that, yes, Pashinyan might have some courage to sign the document. But again, going back the achievements of the Chisinau meeting, it's all clear that the next meetings are going to be in the format of President Aliyev, President Charles Michel, and the Prime Minister of Armenia in that context. So that's also like the question of format is resolved. There is no problem in that. So that's also like the achievement of this meeting.
So the last meeting, which took place on the 1st of June, was on the margins of the second summit of European political community. It was an informal meeting. And so in a sense, we're going to see perhaps some replication of what we observed during May. Early May, the foreign ministers met in Washington. Then on the 14th of May, there was a meeting in Brussels. Again, on the 12th of June, they're going to be meeting in Washington. And then on the 21st of July in Brussels. What are your expectations from the next Brussels summit? As I understand, you don't expect any form of document to be signed there. By document, I mean this so-called long-awaited framework document on peace and interstate normalization.
Again, like any document signed by PM Pashinyan, he should have quite a, the reputational cost of that is going to be huge. So that's why I believe that he is going to keep his distance from signing any document. But again, Minister of Foreign Affairs can sign that. But the next meeting...
What will be the status of the document signed by foreign ministers?
It's going to be a document like it can be intergovernmental document, but it's going to show that there is a progress, there is some signed document. So, but I believe that there should be, there can be some document that's going to renew the tripartite statement, because the tripartite statement is already quite an old document.
Right.
The conditions under which the tripartite statement was signed, there is no world order anymore. That and the regional, I would say, that geopolitical dynamics changed drastically. And I would say that the development taking place in South Caucasus, the developments taking place in Ukraine, it reshaped the regional geopolitical dynamics overall. So it means that the tripartite statement, it's a bit old document, and it does not correspond to the needs of the current day. I would say that you would need to have some, for example, if you review the document, you would see that return of caliber, watching, etc. It's long done issues.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
There is and there is a separate track talking about launched to discuss the issues about the border delimitation demarcation, and then separate track launched about transport connectivity. So all of these documents need more elaborated. All of them need more elaborated document to meet the needs of the current day. So that's why I believe that the tripartite statement should be replaced by some document.
And that document could be the document that could be signed by foreign ministers.
It can be, but frankly speaking, like if it's going to be a statement, just to replace, if it's going to be a fragmented document, one document about the, let's say, connectivity issues, the other one border delimitation demarcation, it can be the officers or the decision makers who are directly responsible for that issue to sign certain documents. So again, I believe that Pashinyan signing any document personally, it's going to be too costing a lot. So that's why he's going to avoid it. But then the other issues like what the foreign countries can promise Pashinyan, that what kind of guarantees he can have that he's not going to lose his power in the case of signing it.
I will come to the point about Pashinyan's personal security and other important matters a bit later. I would like to specifically ask about the EU's mediatory efforts. Many people that I've spoken to say that it looks like a sort of an effort, a personal initiative of Charles Michel, which is not sufficiently backed by the EU in an organizational, institutional sense, as an institutional endeavor. I don't know whether you subscribe to this view or not, but if to take this assumption for granted, it could have its own drawbacks and advantages. So drawback would be that there is no comprehensive institutional backing, but perhaps the plausible side could be that it's a personal initiative, and quite often when political heavyweights use their personality and clout, the swift solution is more likely. What is your take on this?
I would say, okay, I believe that both camps are right.
Right.
The personal input of the President Charles Michel and his team is quite great, so that's why you can talk about the that his personal involvement in the case is noticeable, but also saying that there is no involvement from the EU institutions. I would say so, because what's happening in South Caucasus, in Karabakh right now, is creating a new precedent for the resolution of the conflicts in the territory of former Soviet Union countries' territories. That conflict is going to be resolved by according to the principle of the territorial integrity. And the most challenging conflict in this context for the, I would say, European Union, it's the Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process. If that peace process is resolved, that might have a domino effect in all other conflicts, especially the Ukrainian war. Right. So that is why the institutional involvement of the EU, it's out there. And that when you see that even Washington each time reacts to that, it means that keeping its own, they're always monitoring the process. We see that there is a great interest from Washington. When the Brussels format was in the brink of collapse, Washington intervened.
Early 2023.
Yes, and Washington intervened, and then not to let that the process collapse, but then to deliver it back to the Brussels format, and that we are seeing right now. So when you see that kind of involvement from Washington, also you cannot talk about it only there is no institutional involvement of the EU into the process. No, there is quite great, but again, the personal involvement of the President Michel is quite significant, and in that context, you would see that yes, you can distinguish his own approach to the issue also, and it is in a context when U.S. attention toward China and Southeast Asia is increasing. Most of the conflicts issues in the neighborhood of the European Union. Probably Washington is also interested that European Union takes active role in the conflicts in its close neighborhood. And it's also they're going to help the European Union to be quite active in its transformation process from economic union to a geopolitical one. And that now there are so many voices within European Union talks about the Europe's strategic autonomy, and also saying that Europe is economically strong place. It's really strong place in terms of the soft power. It's great. It has great experience in peace building. I would say that EU itself is a great peace building project. At the same time, there are people who realize that in terms of the hard power, there are a lot of things needs to be done for the EU. So that's why European political community, I believe, that's going to answer those needs. So in that sense, Brussels understanding what's happening in its close neighborhood, reacting to that on institutional basis is very important. So going back to your
original question.
Yes, original question that yes, Charles Michel, President Michel and his team is quite actively involved in that. But also we see that there's quite a interest toward the region on an institutional basis also.
So in a nutshell, the personal initiative of Charles Michel is important, but it's not just a personal initiative, it's backed by EU's institutional resources, if I understood you correctly. And very interestingly, after the meeting, I think France issued a statement. We know that it was an informal meeting, and the French President Emmanuel Macron was there offering his possibly consultative opinions on the matter. But that statement doesn't appear to be some form of a unilateral assessment of France, not a reflection of the consolidated position of the sides. Do you think France is acting as an interloper, or do you think there are too many good things about French involvement which may manifest themselves at a later stage?
I would say that, the French-Azerbaijan relations, they were looked in a pre-Macron times. These relations were one of the most developed relations. What Paris would sell to Baku certain satellites, certain there was a military technology cooperation was in I would say one of its highest points. Even there were times Turkey would not sell certain, let's say, but France would. So that is why we should understand that French-Azerbaijan relations, it has quite a solid basis in this issue. But it's also right that the personal comments by President Macron on issues, and from time to time, when you would see that these things are in the past, that the page is turned, but then he would come back and say a few words that then would destroy all the positive development taking place. And also I would say that the diplomats, the French diplomats and the Azerbaijan diplomats are working on this field. All of them are quite capable, quite professionals. And I would say that you see that the diplomatic institutions in both sides, they have a great interest to keep these relations going on. So that is why when you see some personal interview statement by President Macron, you would see immediately a certain negative development taking place. But then when you see a certain statement by some institution, by other, you will see quite a well thought and a balanced statement out there that's going to help in the process. But I also fully agree with you that French, the diplomacy, France now has gained a huge reputation among Armenian population.
That's true.
So it means that in case of the support, if there is a need to support Pashinyan in his peace agenda, I believe that French leaders support saying that he should sign a certain peace deal. That might be quite decisive for the Armenian society that, French leader also is saying that. So if any other European leader says that Pashinyan is right, he should sign some peace deal, I believe that there will be certain negative reaction from Armenian society. But the French leader says that supports Pashinyan's peace agenda. Armenian society is going to accept it, and it's going to make life for Pashinyan much easier, and it's going to help him also be quite active in this process.
It's undeniably true that France has resources to use its clout, its leverage on Armenia to contribute to final peace. About the last statement, I think that the reason why it was perceived in a negative way in Baku because it was effectively informal meeting, and the perception is that it's Charles Michel who needs to issue a post-meeting statement, and it wasn't up to French President Macron to reflect on the results of this meeting in such a way that he did. So one of the key stumbling blocks within this whole landscape of peace agenda is an issue related to the rights and security of Karabakh Armenians. We understand that Azerbaijani position is very clear. It says that it's an internal matter, it should be sorted out in line with Azerbaijani constitution. The process will be open and transparent, but after all, it's an internal process, and any form of external interference will be dismissed. Armenia does recognize or expressed its readiness to recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, which is at this stage looks like a moral political statement short of legally binding one. But Armenia also says that yes, it's Azerbaijani territory, but the issue related to Karabakh Armenians is an international issue, therefore must be sorted out within the international format. So we see these two conflicting approaches, narratives. How will we be able to find a common ground? Because this is absolutely key to the future deal.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I would say that when Pashinyan says that Armenia recognize Azerbaijan territorial integrity and the Karabakh part of it, it basically should have resolved all the issues, because once you recognize Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, so you have no right to intervene to the internal issues of the other country. But also we know that when Pashinyan in the election after the war, in 2021 elections, Pashinyan promised that there will be great international involvement in the case in Karabakh. So it's all about how Pashinyan is going to sell it to the internal audience. So with the Pashinyan recognizing Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, Armenian leader saying that Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan, all the principal issues are basically, the main issue is out of that. There is like the very few issues and technical issues, questions left to discuss on the international stage. But the conflict transforms to the intra-Armenian dialogue. Will Pashinyan be able to sell that issue to the internal audience, and especially diaspora or diaspora support expert community, partocrats, this Communist Party members, they generated their own line. So in that sense, how Pashinyan is going to sell this issue to the internal audience, that is very important. So if he can sell his vision to the Armenians, I don't see any problem in that. We have witnessed that there is quite a significant internal rift between the diaspora actors and Pashinyan. I would say that Pashinyan sometimes try to create a alternative diaspora presence in Armenia, let's call it like that. But we also see that very radical, there are radical diaspora members, they try to intervene. For example, when Azerbaijan, for a long time, Azerbaijan would say that it's not going to talk to Karabakh Armenians, but at some point it said that it's going to talk to Karabakh Armenians. What happened? A diaspora member was sent to Karabakh and said that on behalf of the Karabakh Armenians, Ruben Vardanyan is going to talk with Azerbaijan. So then the Baku reacted immediately that why, on behalf of the Karabakh Armenians, it should be a diaspora. I know the diaspora narrative, it's not a constructive narrative. It destroys the process. I better talk to the local Armenians.
Yeah.
And those people who claim that they can represent Karabakh Armenians, their presence in Karabakh right now, they also, let's say, you can feel that there is a strong diaspora presence in that issue also. So Baku and Yerevan, I would say right now, they try to clean up the area from the diaspora presence. So if Pashinyan succeeds in making sure that his own discourse is accepted by the local Armenians, I don't expect any problem. And by the way, last week when Karabakh Armenians announced that, no comments no criticism toward the leadership of Karabakh Armenians. But basically, it was limited to all these rights of the Karabakh Armenians to self-express themselves. That rights were taken from them, and it shows that within Karabakh Armenians there are quite a large group of the people who is against the so-called general line of Karabakh Armenian leadership. So that is why, in this sense, I would say that the chances of Pashinyan selling his point to internal audience in Armenia is quite significant, and I would say even in Karabakh quite significant. But then, most of the media, most of the expert community representatives in Armenia, they are the ones who become prominent, got their place under the sun during the Serge Sargsyan and the Robert Kocharian's times. So that's why the question is that is expert community, the media in Armenia, they are expressing the will of the majority, the will of everyone else, or they are communicating back the diaspora narratives as an Armenian narrative to the overall world. So we have seen that, for example, those media would create this image that Pashinyan is done, Pashinyan is going to lose its position, he's going to be killed, but Pashinyan survived, and he keeps surviving, frankly speaking.
He's a survivor.
So, he's quite a survivor in that sense. But it also shows that the perception created by the media and expert community in Armenia, in international platforms among international actors, is not the right one. So that is why we have to keep very much focused on that issue, that Pashinyan is a representative of the alternative Armenia, the Armenia that's not well represented in Armenian media, Armenian expert community, but the real Armenia. So that is why that real Armenia believes in Pashinyan. They want him to be successful. And frankly speaking, when you see a certain members of the Pashinyan team saying that, criticizing Karabakh Armenians, you see that those image about the overall Armenian narrative in Armenia is not the right one. So that is why, Pashinyan recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, but it's time to recognize the sovereignty and then not talk about those issues. It should be left to the international actors, and I believe that Azerbaijan signed quite many international documents saying that ethnic and the religious minorities' rights are going to be well respected. So there are certain international, let's say, observatory presence in the process, and it can be the...
But no interference, of course.
No interference, of course, but in general. So it can be part of the official, the government in Baku. They can make sure that those treaties about the ethnic and the religious minorities, they are fully respected. But the main problem for Baku is creating a special condition for Karabakh Armenians, or any ethnic group within Armenia. If you create a special condition for any ethnic or religious minority, you have to treat the other minorities in the same way. And even the not other minorities, if you are giving certain special rights to Armenian minority in Azerbaijan, there are Georgian minority in Azerbaijan also.
So you have to consider the whole landscape of the country.
Exactly. So you have to give the certain rights to the Georgian minority in Azerbaijan. Once you grant certain rights to the Georgian minority in Azerbaijan, why those rights should not be granted to the Azerbaijan minority in Georgia? Once those rights were granted there, why it's not granted to the Armenians in Georgia? So it can create additional domino effect. So that's why it should be taken into account. But I'm sure that those obligations that Azerbaijan government has in terms of protecting rights of the ethnic and the religious minorities, I don't think that there is going to be any problem. It's natural to the Azerbaijan or mountainous areas. They're always quite a diverse. So the diversity that we have in Azerbaijan right now, it's not the result of the certain political engineering. It's the result of the historical historical past that Azerbaijan passed. So it comes naturally. So that's why I don't think that there will be any big problem in that sense. But again, the biggest issue should be what Karabakh Armenians want right now. For a long time, it was all about self-determination of Karabakh Armenians. Now, in a most critical time, when Karabakh Armenians can come and they say what they want, the leaders of Karabakh Armenians, they shut down all the communication. They are not letting those people to express their minds. Only positive comments about the Karabakh Armenians can take place, can be published in social media. If you are even searching something critical about Karabakh Armenian leadership, you might have punished. So if in a few months ago we would say that there were several people who got arrested on spy charges, those were the people who wanted to do cooperation with Azerbaijan, but they were arrested. Yeah. Now the number of those people are so big, so significant, that there are special restrictive measures are imposed against those people. So that is why your original question, like how it's going to be, like take into account the rights and security of Karabakh Armenians. Yeah. I don't see a big problem in that context. If you take into account that, going back to the diaspora narrative, yes, there are some problems, but as I explained to you for a long time, what Armenian media and the Armenian expert community would portray about Armenia, Armenian goals, they would not become a reality. Look up, the biggest example is about the Pashinyan. It was so many times it was promised that any person giving up on Karabakh is going to get killed immediately, or the Pashinyan is going to lose its position.
By the way, what is the true merit of that claim that his life is in danger now, that there are certain radical elements inside Armenian society which will do their level best to make sure that this peace process is derailed and they could engage in some sort of terrorist attacks against their own prime minister? What is the true validity of this claim? Is it really something we should take into account very seriously?
Okay. For me, always, Armenian narrative, I would divide Armenian narrative distinctively in 3 categories: the diaspora narrative, Armenian narrative, and Karabakh Armenian narrative. So that is why I don't think that Armenian and the Karabakh Armenian narrative can be problematic, or those actors can work against Pashinyan or kill him. Probably those people whose relatives are in diaspora, in Russia, United States, and France, and they are having their, let's say, monthly income from those relatives and remittances, so they can show a certain, let's say, position on that issue. But the most aggressive component is the diaspora narrative. So the diaspora narrative, yes, it can create a danger to the Pashinyan's physical well-being. But I don't think that the Armenian narrative and the Karabakh Armenian narrative, or the representatives of these narratives, can be, I don't think that they're that radical. Of course, they're not happy with what's happening right now. They would see a bit much different Armenia, who is much stronger.
Yes.
But of course, like on the existing conditions, what they want and what diaspora wants, it's completely different issues.
So, as you said, Nicole Pashinyan is a survivor.
Yeah.
And the fact that he won the election in snap elections in 2021 in June or July, I think, during summer, was a clear testament to that. And the opposition, the revanchist bloc, is very unpopular. People do not have trust in that part of that political spectrum. And Nicole Pashinyan is also evolving, he's changing, he's sort of learning from my perspective. For example, back in October 2022, we remember after Prague summit, there was a meeting in Sochi. And before that, Vladimir Putin gave a speech at the Valdai Discussion Club, and he said that this narrative, this deal that you are working on, which is based on the mutual recognition of territorial integrity in line with the Almaty Declaration, could be quite dangerous for Armenia because it doesn't take into account the specific characteristics of Karabakh. So in my view, it was an element of pressure. And I think that at that point, Pashinyan, in a sense, gave in. If you remember, during the meeting on the 31st of October, Nicole Pashinyan said that there was a Russian peace project, and Armenia, in a sense, is in line with this particular project. But something changed about him. In May, for example, when he came to Moscow, he behaved in a different way. Before that, there was an agreement on the 14th of May in Brussels, which was a completely, absolutely crucial agreement. And then he organized his press conference, expressed everything, and made it very clear that the recognition of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity is an absolute must. So he's evolving and changing. But there's one elephant in the room, which is Russia, significant player, which is not going to fade away. And we have noticed that Russia is capable of acting as a spoiler. And in that sense, there's a Zengezur dilemma. I feel that in relation to Zengezur corridor, Baku and Yerevan are more or less in agreement when it comes to the fundamentals. I feel that the main issue there is about the control element over the Zengezur route. And that issue is not the dilemma between Baku and Yerevan, but between Yerevan and Moscow. There's a principle of sovereignty over communication routes, which is essential to the discussions in Brussels, and there is a Russian desire to maintain control. These two things clash. Where do you see this discourse?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, about the Russian presence in the South Caucasus, I'm not one of those people who believe that it's diminishing. I'm one of the people who believes that it's transforming itself, because the communication passing over the South Caucasus, it's a life road for the Russian economy. It's going to connect Russian economy to Turkey, Iran, and the Middle East. So when Russia is under sanctions from European Union and the United States, its economy needs certain ways out of the region. So that's why, in that context, it's South Caucasus becoming quite important life road for Russia. So that's why it should transform its presence. So if Russia is not that active against Azerbaijan in the Karabakh, it doesn't mean that it's getting weaker. It just understands that it should work with Azerbaijan also. So there are that kind of issue. But in that context, Moscow, there are certain issues that, I wouldn't call them secondary importance, but they're not the first importance.
In Moscow.
Overall, in the in Armenian-Azerbaijan peace process.
Yeah.
So how this checkpoint is going to be established in the Lachin corridor, Zengezur corridor, and the Lachin corridor. So according to the recent statement, the Brussels statement on the 14th of May, it says that the World Customs Organization rules is going to be applied. But before, we'd heard that it was going to be Eurasian Economic Union applied. So who is going to achieve, important progress in the process? It's going to be Moscow platform or the Brussels platform. Based on that, so if there is a agreement on the first level issues, such as the territorial integrity and about the Karabakh Armenians, sides are willing to whoever platform is active in achieving that platform, sides can, let's say, as a bonus, give that part to that side. So if Russia is going to be active on our transport issues and then make sure that the transport the Zengezur corridor is open, I believe that it's going to be under the Eurasian Economic Union rules. The transport, the checkpoint rules are going to be based on that. If the Brussels or Washington format, so it might be.
So my question was that those two approaches, they clash. They are against each other. And what will become of Armenia in that sense? Because effectively, Armenia does not want to give that control to Russia, as I understand it. And Brussels is exerting pressure on Armenia to make sure that it doesn't give that control to Moscow. And Azerbaijan is acting in a very reasonable way. In principle, I think we are happy with both options.
Yeah, sure. So that's why, for Azerbaijan, is that transit corridor to and via Nakhchivan operating, Zengezur corridor operating. So that is why. That's the very principal position for Azerbaijan. But again, whose platform is going to be who is going to grant that, who is going to be active and achieve that. So Azerbaijan is ready to give up on the certain issues. But you are absolutely right that it creates quite a big tension between Moscow and Yerevan, because the rules that the Moscow wants to apply to that corridor, it's about the isolated area, transport passage. Yerevan doesn't want to say that at all, and Iran also doesn't want to see it that way. So that is why I believe that there are going to be quite an interesting developments taking place between Moscow and Yerevan. But also, we have to take into account the one important issue that for a long time there was a blame game going on, that who lost Karabakh. So right after the Karabakh War of 2020, it was like all fingers would be pointed to Pashinyan, saying that you lost Karabakh, and he said, no, it's not me, it's Serge Sargsyan and Robert Kocharian, because the way how they left the process to me, it created a lot of problems, and as a result, for 2 years I could not rebuild the army back. I could not do the whatever I was supposed to do in terms of the diplomacy. So as a result, like how can Pashinyan can lose the Karabakh in 2 years? It didn't have enough time to to destroy the army. So army was so weak. So that's why it was like the Serge Sargsyan and Robert Kocharian. But after a certain period of time, that blame game transformed into the who is to blame for the loss of Karabakh. That blame game turned between Armenia and Russia. So Armenia would say that it's Russia, and Russia did not help Armenia properly, did not help Armenia enough so that Armenia can be, strong and put, the effective defense against Azerbaijan and Karabakh. As a result, they lost that. But Russia would say that, look, it's because of Pashinyan. If not Pashinyan, this pro-Western guy, I would do much more. So this pro-Western guy, he was doing so many things that I wouldn't understand its need, and then to do that. And then now we see that Pashinyan, because of the reputational cost, it wants to have as many people in the room as possible, so that that blame of losing Karabakh, it's not concentrated like that on Pashinyan.
Could be evenly spread.
Evenly spread. President Macron, Chancellor Charles, President Michel, he would come back and they say that as Armenian leader, I did everything possible, but in the room there were 5 of us, excluding President Ali, 4 of us, and all of them they said, so it's about the blame game. So that blame game also about this transport corridor issues, about other issues, who is elected, how Pashinyan is going to sell these issues to the internal audience.
That requires great political skills, of course.
Well, like the first stage, the first time when you look at Pashinyan's certain decisions, you would see a quite irrational moves. But the person on a political level, he has a quite good instincts, and he feels like where the threat is coming, and quite in an effective manner, he kind of manages them out and survives. So he has his own way of doing things, usually not standard. He can promise something, then step back.
The phrase that you can't rule out a possibility that the beneath elaborately constructed veneer of a blithering idiot, there lurks a blithering idiot. But I think it does not apply to Mikhail Pashinyan, because he's quite a shrewd operator in many ways. He may not be a great statesman yet, but he's quite a shrewd operator.
He's a politician with quite well-developed instincts.
Right.
He has superb instincts. He understands where the threat is coming from, and he can react to that. So that's for sure.
And my last question: what do you expect in terms of the Baku-Yerevan dynamics by the end of this year? Do you expect any element of finality?
Look, and again, going back, after Armenia recognizing Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, that was the most principal question, and that's out of the. That's resolved.
Right.
All of the other questions are basically technical questions, I would say that. And with that question, there is not much left to discuss on a political, on a level of the political leaders. But there is a huge process, as I mentioned, the whole peace process now transformed into the intro-Armenian dialogue. How Pashinyan is going to sell the developments on international arena to the local population. How he is going to sell it to his own peers. How he is going to win over diaspora narrative.
Right.
So that is why, like, what we should expect, like, by the end of the year.
There's a distinction between a so-called framework document on peace and interstate relations and a comprehensive peace deal. I think our immediate objective is framework document, not a comprehensive peace deal. Is that so?
For me,
they're both the same.
Any document that's going to replace the tripartite state.
That would be the quite most important thing.
Even the same, let's say, one-pager document, just stating the existing realities, but
that would suffice.
Let's say at this time tripartite statement this time, but with the Charles President Michel's signature under that, so that would be the success. Any document, anything signed by Pashinyan would be. But again, I don't know. Like, on international level, there is not many things left to be. The most principal question is out of the side. It's resolved. Pashinyan repeated many times. He did not sign a document, but he repeated it on so many platforms. Outside of Armenia and inside of the Armenia, it's going to be hard to say that he did not say those words. That's basically, it's in terms of the importance of that issue, it's equals to the signed document, I would say. But yeah, of course, like the signed document is something we need. But again, everything is going to depend on the intra-Armenian dialogue. How Pashinyan is going to successful to sell those issues to his internal audience.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm most grateful to you, and I wish you all the best. And hopefully we will have a chance to converse again at some point soon. I very much.
Yeah. Well, invite me. I would be happy to join and discuss.
It was a great delight. Thank you very much.